What's up, y'all? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Alana Marie. I'm a filmmaker, video content creator, and video content coach that helps other novice and experienced filmmakers and video content creators take their content from ideation to execution. Today we are going to be talking about how to conduct a documentary interview. Now, I've already done a video before about how to prepare your documentary subject for their upcoming interview. So this is all of the pre-production preliminary work before you even sit down with your subject and press record. But today we are going to be talking about shoot day, production day, specifically in dealing with your subject and getting ready to interview them for your documentary. Let's go ahead and get started. First thing you want to do is make sure you show up early enough to get your settings right. So contingent upon where you were conducting an interview, whether you were in the subject's home or you were in a place that you have booked out for the subject to arrive to, make sure you give yourself enough buffer time to get your camera equipment ready, to get your audio settings correct, to figure out where in that setting that you want to conduct the interview. Say for instance, if you were in the subject's home, going around the home per their permission to figure out, is it best to do it in the kitchen? Is it best to do it in the living room? Where does natural light come in? If they have other people in the home, where is the most quiet place that you can potentially conduct the interview? But really giving yourself enough time to get the feel of how you want the settings for this interview to go. I typically arrive on set, well, as a director, I arrive super early. But as far as the production team, I give myself at least 45 minutes to an hour before call time and then before filming time. So I can go in with my camera operator and look at his settings and make sure that everything that we need is up to par before the subject even comes into the room. Because I still want to be respectful of their time as well as my time and my team's time. The second thing that you want to do is record room noise. So the subtle and faint hum that we probably don't pay attention to on the average day because we're so used to it, but it does show up on camera. And because we know that it shows up audibly, or it is audible on camera, we get about 10 to 15 seconds of room noise where everybody is quiet. So whatever audio device that you were using to record for the interview, you will use that, set it down, press record, and just get some room noise for about a good 10 to 15 minutes. Because as you're in post-production and you're editing and you're clipping together audio pieces, you're going to need that room noise as an underlying audible piece of content to go under the subject's interview for transitions or whatever you need it for. And so when you press record and you record that audio and you save it, and this will probably be more applicable to post-production, but you're going to save it as a file, an audible file, and you, to make sure that your post-production process is more streamlined, label it as room noise. Third thing that you want to do, extremely important, is to make sure that you provide your interview subject with a release waiver form before you even hit record. This is a task that is often, or can be often, forgotten about, because if you are a small production team, and especially if you don't have a lot of experience, your mindset is primarily on making sure that the timing is right, that you're not wasting anybody's time, that the settings are good on your camera, that your batteries are charged, and that your subject arrives on time, and that you know the questions to ask. All of these things are rightfully so going through your mind. So forgetting to provide your interview subject with a release waiver is more common than not. And this is where having a production assistant with you on production day comes in handy, because they can take care of the logistical work while you as the filmmaker or director can strictly focus on the subject, on the questions, on being artistic and guiding throughout the day. The other logistical things, you can provide those tasks to the production assistant. But what I typically do, I set my release waiver on top of my camera bag, or inside my camera bag. It is the first thing that I see. So before I even grab the camera, because I do also bring my camera with me on shoot days, even though I have a camera operator for a B-cam camera for B-roll, but I will put the release waivers on top and I give that to them before we even start recording. My release form is actually labeled release with authorization to record, basically stating that the person or the subject, the releaser, is granting me permission to record their audio, to record their video, and to record their likeness for my film project. So it'll have my name, the dates, it'll have my production company's name, it'll have my production company's address, and then at the bottom it gives the subject space to write their name, where the interview was actually being conducted, and for them to sign. Some of my subjects have actually asked me to make a copy of it and give to them. Even better, right? So I'll have backup for just in case. Nothing has ever occurred to where I've had to show it for proof, but I still have it, and I keep a digital copy as well as the physical copy. If you forget anything else today, remember release form. So your settings are good and you got the room tone, your subject has filled out the release form, and now you are getting ready to start the interview. And so one of the things that I do to make sure that the audio level that the subject will be speaking from, because some are soft spoken or some are more casual when they don't know that you were recording. And so what I will ask them to do is speak in a tone and a level that they would having a normal conversation. That way I can listen before we actually start asking the actual interview questions to see where the audio level is. So some of the questions that I ask them before we begin recording on video is, what did you eat for breakfast? And more likely than not, they will say, I didn't have anything for breakfast. And so then I will say, if you did eat breakfast today, what would you have made? And then they'll go through like an itemized list: bacon, eggs, grits, biscuits, all of the good stuff, right? And so as they're talking, I'm listening to their tone, I'm listening to their inflections and figuring out if I need to turn it up more, if I need to turn it down. If they don't give me enough meat from that question, I ask them, what is your favorite color? Or what are your plans for the rest of today? Not only to gauge their audio level, but to also get them more comfortable and lax before we get started with the nitty-gritty. Another thing is I remind my subject that they are not required to answer any of my questions. If there is something that they are unsure of, or if there's something that they're not comfortable with, I always let them know before we begin filming that they are under no obligation to answer any of my questions, and they are more than welcome to let me know that in advance, say I'm not comfortable answering that question, or I don't know. And so while I've conducted several interviews, not just in documentary film, but working with video clients, if I'm having to interview somebody, no one has yet to say that they're not comfortable answering a question. But just in case that they know that they have that option, I put that out in the open and verbalize it to make them even more comfortable before we begin filming. The very first actual interview question I ask them is to say their name, first and last name, and to slate their name. So they will state their first and last name, and then they will spell out their first and last name. If, say for instance, if you will not be the one working in post, if somebody else is going to be editing your film or your video content, they need to know the correct spelling of your subject. And so while that would be them, actually the video clip of them saying their name will be cut out of the video, that helps the editor make sure that everything from logistics to the naming, all of that is correct if you're not going to be the one editing. But also for you to remind yourself of, I don't remember how to spell their name. Well, you have it on camera. Another thing that I make sure that I am extremely conscious of are my verbal cues. Us as humans, even in regular conversation, when somebody is talking to us, we have a keen habit of unknowingly, right? Don't do that in an interview. And it is so hard. It is borderline awkward as they're talking and they're making points. I'll nod my head all day, but I'm making sure that I'm not uttering any noises or any sounds. I don't need any unnecessary sounds on camera while we are filming. And so making sure those I call them little subtle tics, because we don't realize that we're doing it because it's just so normal. But it is a learned trait to sit there and not provide any verbal affirmation to them as they are speaking or making a point. Sometimes they'll say something that gets me excited. I'll widen my eyes, or I'll laugh on the inside, or I'll smile. I've had instances where a subject has made me laugh and I held it in until they got done, and then I burst out laughing, right? So it gets easier as you go along, but this really helps out in the editing process because audio is just as, if not more important than video. Another thing to look for when conducting your interview is that when they are finishing up a statement, try to count to yourself 1, 2, 3, and then ask your next question, because you don't want to follow up immediately after they're done answering a question, because one, they may have more to say now that they've had time to sit, reflect for a couple of seconds, and then maybe follow up with some more content. And these pauses are also good for editing, because when you're editing, you'll see the audio wavelengths where there's a pause and a break. And if you need to cut at that moment, you're not cutting on yourself or have to make a short cut because you said something a little bit too soon. So I do it for those 2 reasons: to make sure that they don't have anything else that they want to say, and to make sure that that is a clean cut. I'm always thinking about post-production as I'm filming. Whatever I can do in the middle of production to make post-production and editing a little more seamless, all for it. So as we begin to wrap up the interview, I will have my set list of questions, but I will also have or go off of their cues based on what we're talking about. They may bring up a topic that I may not have been knowledgeable about, and I will ask them to expound on that. But as we wrap up, I will ask them, is there anything else that they would like to share about the topic, or that they feel that whoever's going to be watching this video would need to know about? And I will have them sit. They'll either say yes. More likely than not, they will have more that they want to say. And as they wrap it up, extremely helpful. Oh, how could I forget? Recite your statement, the question, and their answer. So one thing that we also have a habit of doing is, if somebody asks you a question, you answer it directly, right? What did you eat for breakfast? Bacon, eggs, smoothie, whatever. So for the purposes of a documentary interview, I will prompt them to recite my question and their answer. So, what is your name? My name is Susan Abernathy. I don't know. What was it like to work at that school? When I worked at that school, it felt like X, Y, and Z, because those are the statements that you will see as whole statements, as whole clips in the final video. Those work great for transitions. This gives context to the viewer to know what it is that you are talking about, because the viewer is not going to hear you as the interviewer asking those questions, but they still need to know what it is that you were talking about. This should have been like number 2. I don't really understand how I forgot this. Such and such, be sure to recite the question in your answer before providing the answer. And I've actually had instances, which awkward as that was as well, where I've had to stop subjects mid-interview and tell them, could you start this sentence over again by reciting the question in your answer. And I feel bad because sometimes they're in the thick of it and they're really feeling it and it's really animated, and I have to tell them to stop and then brew those emotions and animation back up and restate the answer in a way, like pretend that they didn't already say it. That's kind of challenging sometimes, but it literally gets easier as you do them. For my documentary, the Kinlock doc, I interviewed over 23 people, and 4 of them I've interviewed more than once. And so I've had instances where I had to ask the same questions to the same person again and coach them on how to respond to it, or either ask it in a different way so it can come off as if they are answering the question for the first time. And I think I did a really, rather good job. So these are just some of the tips that I found extremely useful when conducting an interview for my documentary and working with documentary subjects. I hope that you have found these useful. And if you have any tips that you have used in the past for any of your video projects, or if you have any comments or questions about how to you have any projects coming up at all, let me know about any film projects that you have coming up, and if you plan on implementing any of these tips for your upcoming documentary or video. Also, for my documentary filmmakers and video content creators, if you are having a hard time moving your content from ideation to execution, if you are having trouble trying to figure out what type of media platform to upload your media, if you have all of these ideas jumbled in your mind and you just need somebody to spew those ideas to and get help shaping and articulating what type of content you want to produce, here she is. So I offer 60-minute consultations to novice and experienced documentary filmmakers and other video content creators to help you gauge and to help you really get clarity on the type of content that you want to produce. I will leave those links in the description box below. Check it out as you will. I hope this has been extremely helpful and resourceful to you today. And until next time,